believe we're ready to start. Before we get started, we would bow our heads for a prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we again thank you for another day. We ask that you look over this committee as we try to decide the best things for the people of the state of Georgia. We ask that you lead, guide, and direct us in all the things that we say and do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, today we're going to be hearing House Bill 831. So if you don't have any, if that's not the bill you're in here for, you're in the wrong room. What we're going to do is we're going to have the author of the bill come up and present the bill. Mr. McCall, if when you come up here, if you need someone with you to help answer questions of the committee, certainly welcome to have that. We're going to have him present the bill. The committee will then ask questions of the author, and then we're going to allow these people that are signed up time to come up and speak. And I will call your name, and you can come up, and I'll tell you who's next. So maybe you can be up here, maybe at the post up here, ready to go when that person finishes. Because we have so many, we're gonna limit it to 3.5 minutes a person to come up and speak. After that's over with, we will allow the author to come back and sum up, and then we will go from there. Anybody on the committee have a question about the procedure we're going to follow? Is anyone in the audience that has a question, doesn't understand what we're going to be doing? Okay, Chairman McCall, we'll call on you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I apologize for bringing this little non-controversial thing to your first committee meeting that you were chairing. But I do appreciate you allowing me to have the Commissioner of Department of Human Services help me answer these questions.
Okay.
Because I'm going to tell you straight up front, I don't know the answers. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you I don't know the answer. But I appreciate you allowing somebody like him that is well versed on this more than I am to be able to explain a lot of this. And I'm not known for going into each section line by line or taking a whole lot of time explaining the bill. And this one's pretty simple and clear cut if you will look at it. The whole bill, all the way through it, simply takes Department of Vocational Rehab out of Department of Labor and puts it in Department of Human Services. And if you'll look down through there, that's what all the strike-throughs and underlines do. The only other thing you see is it's changing Title 34 to Title 49, which is moving out of labor into human resources. And if you'll look on page 5, the only questions I've had about what some of these strike-throughs do, it talks about taking the employees out of the employee retirement system, but that's only because it's pulling it out of the Department of Labor, and they automatically go back into the employee retirement system when they become employees of Department of Human Services. It's my understanding that this is just a pick it up out of this agency and set it down in this agency. Nobody loses a job, nobody loses services, and that's it. As far as what I need to explain about what the bill does. It's just a lot of lawyer language that it takes to get that done. That's why we have 17 pages worth of strike-throughs and ads. So without taking up a whole lot more time and letting people that have come a lot further than I have let y'all know what their opinions are on what this bill attempts to do, I'm going to try to answer your questions, or either let the Commissioner answer them and let these other folks talk, sir, if that's all right with you.
Okay. Do I have anyone that has a question of the author? Chairman?
Yeah. Mr. McCall,
Yes,
Representative McCall, why are we changing from one department to the other? I mean, just give me the answer why.
In my opinion, and I'm giving you an opinion, and let me go back a little bit. I don't know if I'm handling this bill because of my son that died that was had spinal bifida and was in a wheelchair for his life, or if at some point part of this language is not in this particular bill, going to the Department of Agriculture. In my opinion, I think that rehab services work better with Department of Human Services, where they are used to working with that, that kind of situation that rehab services does. And that's just my opinion. Now, if you want from an expert, I'll be glad to get out of the way.
Just a second. Did Representative Maddox, did he answer the question? Okay. Chairman Chanel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman McCall, this question is probably for the Commissioner. Commissioner, you and I talked earlier today. One of the things that I'm somewhat concerned about, the mission of vocational rehabilitation, the stated mission, is to prepare people with disabilities to achieve successful employment and independence and to get a job. My question to you is, help me get more comfortable with the fact that how are we requiring people, if you will, to go someplace other than where they're going now? That is to say, going from Department of Labor to your department. Do you think this will improve their chances of getting a job? I mean, to me, my major concern, as we discussed earlier, is being sure that folks with disabilities have the best chance of securing a job. Will you speak to that relative to it being moved into your department?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Representative Schnell, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Clyde Reese. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services. When this idea was first broached to me in December of last year, I was asked to think about what potential synergies there are for the work of vocational rehab services and what the Department of Human Services does. These services in the years 2000 and prior were in the old Department of Human Resources, and they were moved to the Department of Labor. And I want to make it clear that I'm not here today to talk about the performance or what the Department of Labor has or has not done, or in any way to disparage the Department of Labor in the analysis of this proposal. What I was asked to do is consider the synergies, and I think it's important to understand that the old Department of Human Resources is no longer. The Department of Human Services now is composed of 4 principal programs. We have the Department of Family and Children's Services, which you know as DFACS. We have the Department or the Division of Aging Services. We have the Division of Child Support Services. And we have the Office of Residential Child Care, which licenses group homes for children who've been removed from their homes. What people don't know so much is that the new Human Services has a very strong focus on employment and putting people to work. We are the safety net for the state for those persons who cannot care for themselves. But one of our primary focuses across all those programs is to prepare people, whether it be through education, whether it be through training, whether it be through contractual assistance in many ways, to prepare them to enter the workforce and to be productive citizens of the state of Georgia and not be in a position of dependency. So within the department or the Division of Family and Children's Services, we are the foster children's agency. So we have children who are in state custody. We have many children who are at the ages of 14 through 21 who are aging out of the foster care system. And we do a tremendous amount of work with preparing them to enter the workforce, to be self-sufficient as they're no longer in state custody. Also in DFACS, you remember that the old welfare system was pretty much a cash assistance benefit to individuals. The program that we have now, that you know as TANF, which is Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, this is a program focused on time-limited cash assistance, and the focus is to get people to work and to enter the workforce and to stay in the workforce so that they are not dependent on the state for their welfare. Within the Division of Child Support Services, we do a lot of work with non-custodial parents to find work for them, to prepare them to work, to educate them to be able to get a job so that they can pay their child support payments and fulfill their responsibilities. Within the Division of Aging, we help elderly people stay in their homes, maintain their jobs, be able to find work so that they do not have to leave home and go into the long-term care system, which we all know is much more expensive. And at the enterprise level, at the Department of Human Services, across human resources, legal, technology, financial, we try to provide a strong infrastructure for each program so that they are allowed to focus on their unique circumstances, their unique clients, their unique services, so that we provide the support, we provide the resources, the attention, and the focus they need to make sure that the people they serve have everything they need in order to succeed. So we felt that there were tremendous synergies with the work that we do and the work that vocational rehabilitation does. We feel that we can, across that entire spectrum of all those programs, doing things to provide services to people to get them ready to work, whether they be foster children, whether they be, many of which I should say are disabled or have some disability, whether it be those in the TANF program, whether it be non-custodial parents, whatever it may be. We feel that vocational rehabilitation is a good fit across all the spectrum of what it does, with the blind impaired, the vision impaired folks, with the disability adjudication section that does the eligibility for Social Security disability for the facilities at Warm Springs, and also for the rehab services themselves, that we can provide that synergy across the spectrum to get people prepared. And then when you go, and the Department of Labor is not going to be out of this picture, because those jobs that are available that they have ready for qualified people across the spectrum of everything we do, including vocational rehabilitation, those folks would be ready to go there and ready to take advantage of those jobs that are available. And so we feel like we could work across agency lines and have the synergies that exist between human services, and keep in mind that there are some people with disabilities who may not be able to find gainful employment, and therefore as the social services agency, as the safety net, we would be able, and we're well experienced in providing services to them that to help them maintain a lifestyle that's available to them. And they're also the ability to find work and find jobs in other areas than just through the Department of Labor. We have arrangements and agreements with private and not-for-profit and public entities to help find work for all the people that we serve through all that spectrum that I've just described. So for that reason, we felt that the synergies did exist.
Mr. Chairman, I have one follow-up question, if that's all right. So after, if this bill passes, and hopefully after people with disabilities are trained and are ready to have a job, how do you have any? How would you work with the Department of Labor to actually get them a job? You prepare them, but then you got to get a job. How would you do that?
Well, for example, the Department of Labor has contracts with entities that work with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, and the Department of Human Services has contracts with those same entities. So we work with the Department of Labor on many initiatives now. We work with them on our fatherhood program and the child support services to help non-custodial parents get jobs. So I like to talk about the state as a whole and not as siloed departments. We talk a lot about that and have in the past year in the Deal administration with the health agencies. So this is not so much that these programs would be divorced from the Department of Labor and not able to avail themselves of the services that they have, but within the spectrum of human services, including vocational rehabilitation services, we would go to, once those people were prepared, we would go to the Department of Labor, very similar to what we do with foster children now, or TANF participants, or non-custodial parents, to try to avail themselves of those resources in as seamless a fashion as possible.
Thank you.
All right. We've got a lot of people that want to ask questions. I'm taking them in order that they lit up. Representative Hextall.
I think mine would be very, very, very simple. I guess I'm trying to determine, and maybe I'm perceiving this wrong, understanding it wrong. It sounds to me like you still have to go back to the Department of Labor, even if this was transferred. Am I correct?
In some circumstances, yes, but not in all circumstances. There are other employment opportunities that are available to all of the people we serve, including vocational rehabilitation.
So are you telling me that you really don't have a self-contained strategy for employment, that you still have to go back to the Department of Labor?
I'm saying I don't think that is the case, Representative. I think that in certain circumstances we would if that was the proper thing to do, but we also have arrangements with many other entities across the spectrum, public and private, to provide jobs.
Then am I to clearly understand that you do not have, other than contracting or going with the Department of Labor, you do not have a self-contained total employment opportunity for people that would be coming through your department if they're transferred to your department from the Department of Labor?
We do not have an employment office. We provide employment training and preparation for persons all across the spectrum.
I understand, and I apologize for not making myself clear. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'll make this very brief. So the answer to that, if I'm understanding correctly, would be no.
If the job that you are talking about that you want to place someone in is offered through the Department of Labor apparatus, that would be separate from the Department of Human Services.
Okay. Chairman Dixon.
I just wanted to make sure we talked about that this was basically a bill transferring things from one department to another. Is there anything in the bill that's new? And have we added anything in the process, or is everything that's contained a transfer?
Sir, our focus is to do what we call lift and shift, and that is to take the programs as a whole, bring them over to the Department of Human Services with no reduction in employment, with no deletion of rights or benefits of the state employees. So there is no focus by the Department of Human Services to look at any programmatic or substantive changes until the programs actually were in the department and we had an opportunity to evaluate going forward to make them the best they could be. But this proposal is merely to lift and shift.
Thank you.
Representative Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question centers around budget, and one of my concerns is, or one of my questions is, how much has been cut out of the DHS budget over the last 4 years? But I know you just came in. Was it last year that you just came in?
That's right.
Okay. And then what have you seen or heard of budget cuts in the amended budget for 2012 and the upcoming budget of 2013? And the reason why I'm asking that is I'm concerned that as this budget is transferred over to the Department of Human Service, that differently abled people will not have access to the same type of money that is available. So will that pot of money stay separate, or does it now become a part of all of the DHS?
Well, the first part of your question is that, as you realize, in the last few years, we've been asked, in the last years of the Purdue administration, agencies were asked to take pretty substantial budget cuts. In the first year of the Deal administration, the governor recommended to agencies that they submit proposals with cuts of 2%. In working with the Office of Planning and Budget and the governor's office, the DHS proposed budget for fiscal year 12 amended in fiscal year 13 actually includes some enhancements to help us with some things, and actually does not across the board show a 2% reduction. So we feel like we came out very well and better than we have in probably the past 4 or 5 years. The agency is no longer on furloughs, which you may have heard the department was doing in previous years. But the second part of the question is, if this proposal were to come to fruition, the vocational rehabilitation services would become a separate program within the Department of Human Services with its own program budget. And this bill calls for the funding that is associated with vocational rehab, including administrative funding, to come over. And we do not mingle program budgets among the different areas, and we do not mingle staff. So this would be a concentrated, focused budget with the funding that's coming over, and we would also attempt to try to maximize federal funding as well.
Thank you.
Can I answer one more thing?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's been almost $8 million cut out of vocation rehab in
Mhm.
the Department of Labor. I don't know if most of the cuts that we were talking about that the governor and us asked for
Mm-hmm.
came out of VR, through the Department of Labor. I don't know if it was a movement across the board
Mhm.
cut.
Representative McCall, would you move over to the microphone where everybody can hear you?
What I do know that it was around not quite $8 million that had been cut. They've also drawn down federal funds. However, in 2010, there was about $27 million worth of federal funds that was left on the table for VR that went back to other states. And in 11, there was about $35 million that was left on the table that went back to other states to use for vocational rehab. I don't know if that had anything to do with how much of the $8 million was cut as far as matching funds go. I don't know how all those formulas work.
Mm-hmm.
But that does that kind of help you understand whether he keeps it separate or whether DOL uses maybe VR for the 2%?
Yes, I was very
That's
clear
correct.
on the things that you added. I was just curious about the DHS budget. Thank you.
Representative Collins.
Well, the way I would answer that is I would say that what we want to do is, if this comes to fruition, is maximize the services that exist across the entire spectrum, not only with getting a job, but for those people who need to help to get to that point, and those people who may need the social services safety net if they don't ever get to that point. So that's why one of the reasons we thought there were great synergies with the other things that the Department of Human Services does, because we are the social services safety net for persons. So we have experience, and I personally have experience with the administration of healthcare facilities, so we're very comfortable with the advent of Warm Springs joining the department if that happens. And what we want to do is maximize all the services that are available across the board. I understand and appreciate the focus with regard to work. And we, as I said initially, we do a lot of work, we do a lot of efforts with that. But there are other parts to the continuum as well, and we feel that they would be a good fit within human services. I think that the existing agreements are pretty much trying to utilize the services and the infrastructure of the Department of Labor to help the people who are served initially in the programs within human services. But certainly I think there, as I said, there are opportunities to expand our relationship across agencies and across programs for the end of the day to provide the best service to the citizens. I try to always talk about the citizens out there don't care what logo is on a piece of paper. They want the best services available, and they don't care what department they come from. And so I would hope and think that we could all work together for that purpose. And our goal here is to do no harm. If something is working, we don't want to affect it in a negative way. And if something needs improvement or needs attention, then we would, of course, seek to do that in the future.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Representative Collins pretty much touched on my thing. You had mentioned about people who were having a problem that could not be employed, that you felt that your agency was a better fit for that from the safety net aspect, and I think you've addressed my concerns with his remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many new services have been added to the Department of Human Service over the past 5 years?
Well, it's mainly been a situation of retraction from the old Department of Human Resources. As you recall, in years past, that was an agency over 20,000 people with over $3 billion budget. But in the last 3 to 4 years, the Department of Public, at that time, the Division of Public Health has been removed, and it's now a department on its own. The Mental Health Department, Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, was a division within the old DHR. It is now a separate agency. The body that regulates the licensing of most healthcare facilities was moved to the Department of Community Health. So there's been a retrenching and a refocus of the old Department of Human Resources to an agency that's leaner and more amenable to concentrate on its core mission.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You go ahead.
Okay, sir. How would this move affect the people in voc rehab? Speaking of the clients and the workers, how would it affect them?
Well, we've had experience in the last few years in the health arena with transferring departments out of one into the other or divisions, and there would be no disruption in employee benefits. The basic methodology is to, on June 30, you are an employee of one agency. On July 1, you're an employee of another, and all your retirement system, all your benefits, all your leave, etc., go with it. We have no plans whatsoever to reduce any staff. We intend to bring over, that's why I use the term lift and shift. The entire program's over. With regard to the clients, as I said, our intention is to do no harm. If we are preparing for a transition, we want to do it in such a way that we do not disrupt any services, that the transfer is seamless to the greatest extent possible with regard to the people who get the services.
Okay. Representative McCall, we appreciate it. We're going to go into the public part of the hearing. I'm going to call on Commissioner Mark Butler first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting the commission.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Y'all see he knows a whole lot more than I do.
Okay, all right.
You'll let me wrap up in
Yes, sir.
preferably about 15 minutes and not 2 hours, right?
Okay, all right. Commissioner, I'm going to give you a little leeway since give you 10 minutes on this, and then we'll have questions for you, and I think that will, if that's I think that'll probably be enough time for you there. So.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily have to take the whole 10 minutes to tell you the truth. I'd really like some of the people that can really tell the story.
Okay,
to
well,
have
just
more time.
I'll give you up to 10 minutes, and then I'm sure we've got some representatives who'd like to ask you some questions on this, and then we'll get to the people in the audience there. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having me, being able to speak here today. This will be one of the first times I've got to express my opinion on this move. First and foremost, I want everybody to understand that vocational rehabilitation, in my view, is a jobs program that fits very well with the Department of Labor. I am opposed to this move. I do believe that it is a much better fit. And all you have to do is go back and look at your history. You go back 10 years, this General Assembly saw fit to move this from the DHR, which is now DHS, over to the Department of Labor. And they did it because they wanted to improve services. So your next question should be, well, has that happened? It has. Ever since it has moved, services have gotten better. Placements have gotten better. A 24% increase in placements since it's been in the Department of Labor. And a staggering fact that during this recession that we're in, this terrible recession that has been hard on every family no matter what your background is, We're one of the very few states in America whose placements have gone up every single year in VR. That's a hard thing to do. Now, but I want to share something else with you. Some of these folks up here on this panel, y'all have known me for a long time. I've served with you. You know where my passions lie. The people sitting out here in this audience, some of these I have worked with the last 8 years. You know, my passion in the 8 years I was in General Assembly is helping people with disabilities. Talked about, Representative Bell talked about the agency and the changes happened. I was part of the move to make those changes in DHR, along with Governor Sonny Perdue, because we knew there needed to be a change. And there has been. It has worked. I believe we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, a little bit better service to people with mental health. That was a very good move. And the reason why I say that is, I'm here to tell you, this is not about Mark Butler. Okay? I'm as honest with you as I can be. If I thought for 1 minute, 1 second, that this would help people with disabilities, I would ring it from the bell tower. I would stand up and say, this is a good thing. But my conscience will not let me say that. And I don't mean any disrespect to the author, anybody else proposing it, but I can't go against what I believe in. I can't, no matter what that means. We do a good job. I believe people with disabilities deserve the exact same access to the jobs that everyone else does. I believe, I just can't see how that this is going to be better. We're going to shuffle them off to a different place. And that's not right. They should be treated just the same. With that, I can take some questions, and I would like to reserve a minute or two at the end of this to close up, if that would be okay with the chairman. But I would really, you really need to hear from the people that participate in these services, to advocate for these services, listen to their stories. And I think that will serve you well.
Okay. All right. Representative Maddox.
Thank you. One question I have here, I was looking over a lot of information and so forth, and it was talking about loss of integrated services and how they're drawing down with federal funds. Can you just tell me a little bit about matching federal funds? Are we going to lose matching federal funds when we switch?
Well, that's a very good question. Thank you, Representative Maddox. And also, this kind of dovetails into what the commissioner said and what the author said. As far as cuts to the VR program, those have been program cuts across the board throughout. We've all had to deal with cuts. And anytime you cut $1 out of vocational rehabilitation, you lose 4. So those cuts are much more severe. I know that in my agency, in this last budget, we had to present our 2% cuts. VR had a 2% cut. The other part of Department of Labor actually received much more severe cuts. We're looking to see over $5 million of money that is supposed to be in unemployment insurance redirected toward the interest payment, a lot higher than 2% cut. But as far as the losses of monies, one of the things that we have been at the forefront on is trying to find better ways to pull down more money and help more people. There's a program in the Department of Labor, and the architect of that program is here, and you should listen to her. It's called OASIS. It's where we actually use our career center staff that are paid out at the other part of Department of Labor, along with VR, and by combining those services, we are able to draw down additional monies. My theory on bringing in services is to co-locate as many of these offices as possible, so that way you're coming in one door, no matter who you are, one door for services. And we break this apart, we're in danger, serious danger of losing $8 million of vocational rehabilitation money. Not to mention the integration of services that we have worked so hard. The feds other states are looking at us. They want to copy what we are. People talk about, well, other states put it in their human service agencies. Well, we should compare ourselves to those other ones. The results in the states that put vocational rehabilitation in their labor or workforce agencies have better results than the ones that put it in human services.
One additional question, Mr. Chairman. I represent over in Decatur County the Georgia Industries for the Blind, and it goes real good. A lot of people in there, there's no way they could go anywhere else, but they're there, they're doing their job, they've been trained, and they got a lot of employees that are trained to do this, helping them and so forth. And I'm really concerned if we change this over, are we going to lose anything there? Are we going to, what's going to happen to these people that's working there that are permanently blind, so to speak?
That program runs well, and most of their money comes from earned revenue. They do well.
That's
they have
right.
a lot of contracts, do really good work. I am a little disappointed that they did lose a state contract not too long ago to make safety vests. Still working on trying to help them get that back. I believe we ought to be buying them from them instead of China. I think you would agree with that. I mean, they hold their own pretty well. I'm more concerned about the fact of taking a jobs program. I mean, you want to talk about siloing agencies. You want to talk about separating agencies. This is a jobs program. We don't need to cause more confusion by separating the jobs programs. It makes it harder.
Okay. Representative Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question for you is, Representative McConnell addressed the fact about money that was left on the table and had to go to other states. What do you attribute that to? Because we know that that's happened in other departments. We see it all the time in the Department of Transportation and in city and municipal governments.
It's the lack of state matching funds. All I can do is advocate for more funds, but General Assembly appropriates. We have to do with what we can. But we all understand these are hard times. I'm not laying the blame on anybody on that. We wish we had the full amount and we could draw down as much as humanly possible. We've tried to do the best we can to leverage what we have in the Department of Labor and have done a very good job of that. But that is not that is not my pick to do that.
Right.
I want all that money to come back to Georgia. I don't want it going to Wisconsin or whomever. That needs to stay in Georgia. And I have advocated for that. And I have asked the advocates to advocate for that too.
May I ask a follow-up question, Mr. Chair? In addition to the budget cuts, Commissioner Reese talked about the fact that the Department of Human Services could provide additional services in terms of health care and things along those lines of connecting that. For the differently abled people who now receive services through the Department of Labor, how do they receive that type of help? Is that something that they also receive from Department of Labor, or are they connected with other organizations that do that?
Well, here's the thing. Vocational Rehabilitation, Department of Labor is about jobs. That's what we focus on. That is our mission. We focus on jobs. If there's a situation where they need those other services, those services are available to them, DHS. There is nothing that stops them from doing that now.
Okay.
Moving this part of this agency from Department of Labor to DHS does not change that one bit. It is still available to them now.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate you coming in. I'll give. Oh, I'm sorry. You mashed it. Okay. Go ahead.
That's okay. That is correct. That is correct.
One last thing, and then one is sort of relevant to this, and something goes back that you and I have worked together, and I remember you forcefully advocating dealing with departments and watching you do that, is making sure that there was input from those departments, even from people who didn't want to see. I'm concerned that there was an email sent that they could answer to a couple of those. It basically said the commissioners indicated that any breach of this protocol will be considered insubordination. Will have consequences, so please ensure that appropriate staff is informed of the complaint.
I've,
It said to answer to a 404-291-5556 or to an admin office.
I've never seen that email,
Okay.
nor did I ask for that to be sent.
You can say, because I've listened to you talk about that same issue,
Oh.
we dealt with these other agencies.
The only thing that
It's concerning to me.
The only thing that we requested all people being contacted is that they need to make sure that we're notified what's being contacted by, because we had had a complaint before from the governor's office where they stated that they were asking for stuff and not getting it, and I was accused of stonewalling. And so I informed them, I said, well, we can put a stop to that. Would you please start sending all those requests through my office so that way we can keep track of it and make sure you get an answer. That's the only thing that we request, is make sure it came through us, that way we could keep track of it, because if people are just calling anybody and everybody, I don't know if they're getting their answers or not. I have no way of knowing. But I, yeah. Oh yeah. No. I do have that same sheet, and I can go over those one by one. Oh yeah, that's not a problem. One of them has, it says that we were not in compliance with organizational requirement that 90% of the staff work full-time on vocational rehabilitation and other rehabilitation-related services at 9%. Right. Okay, we were at 89%. Okay. However, the reason why we were at 89% was the feds changed their definition of other rehabilitation-related services. A lot of states got hit with that. However, we fixed that immediately. We had moved disability adjudication services, which is not really related to VR. It's a Social Security Administration program that we basically have some oversight over. It's basically almost like a contract with Social Security. We had moved them to a different part for administrative purposes. Immediately moved them back because they said that would qualify under that section as other services, which I couldn't find the logic in that personally, but if they okayed it, then that's what we did. Otherwise, they were saying that, my only other option would have been to lay off people with disabilities working actually in Gene Maddox's area, which when I told them that would be the only way to fix it to get back to that 1%, the feds were like, "Whoa, we can't do that. We'll find something else to fix it with." So I was like, I told them, I said, "Well, we're not going to do that. I'll be under 1% to keep them employed." The other thing, it said DOL, I think you may have read this one, showed expenditures of a lesser amount than the amount of cash drawn down against the grant. That error was not on our end. They had to do the state treasury OPB. Okay. We have since corrected that. Working with them. One of those simple accounting things, not a big deal. Let's see, what was the other ones you...
personnel costs are not allocated appropriately
right.
to each program.
Those were, and I can believe Annette can correct me if I'm wrong, that had to deal with some of our VR people hitting in the wrong code. If you've ever worked over there in the Department of Labor, I'll go ahead and tell you, one of the things that kind of shocked me is how we have to bill back to the federal government. There's all these little codes, and it's a very, antiquated system that they have set up in my, but it's, oversight is tight. We cannot commingle those monies, and we do not commingle those monies. If there is anything that even looks like commingling, it's from the Career Center side back over to VR, because we can provide some assistance and help. that you can't do somewhere else, because the expertise for going back to work is in the career centers.
Thank you for your answer.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. We'll bring you back up in just a few minutes after all these other people have talked. We'll give you a couple of minutes at the end, and we'll give Representative McCall the final say-so. The first person coming up will be Annette McCauley, and on deck will be Tim Evans. If y'all kind of make your way up here to the post right here and be ready to go when that person is finished. We're going to give you 3.5 minutes. This young lady right here is a timekeeper,
Okay.
and when we get to 3 minutes, she's going to wave at you, and you got
Okay.
30 seconds after that.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I wanted to first introduce myself. I wear 2 hats. I am the Deputy Commissioner of Rehabilitation Services in the Department of Labor, but I'm also a former VR client of the Georgia VR program. I was afforded the opportunity to complete my college education with rehab support, and once I went to work for the Department of Rehab Services, I also was afforded the opportunity to get my master's degree, and I still maintain my certification as a rehab counselor. I had prepared actually information to share with you about the service integration strategy that one of you mentioned, and the potential for loss of that in moving to DHS, but we've already heard a little bit about it, so I'm going to shift some of my comments because of some of the questions that have been asked, some of the comments that have been made. Representative Collins mentioned an email that was sent, and read an excerpt from that. I need to make the committee aware that we found out about this really after the fact, after it hit the news media in terms of the transfer, so there was a lot of chaos in the Department of Labor and specifically in rehab services. I was getting a lot of calls. People were being reached out to by various people. Media was calling, and it was decided that we needed to speak with one voice. People were well informed that as a private citizen they had the right to speak to anyone they wanted to and voice any opinion, but if they were speaking for the Department of Labor, we again wanted to ensure that correct information was being shared and that we managed that. So that's what that particular email was about. Also wanted just to speak a little bit about Representative McCall's comments and Commissioner Reese. I realize that, again, this came without a lot of research and study, so people are kind of still trying to grasp what it means to transfer the agency, but I would say that stating that DHS is a better environment for a jobs program doesn't really ring true with me. The fact that they're better able to deal with the population of people with disabilities, I think, has been refuted in actually the information that they produced recently. I think you all have copies of their external message. I think someone might have quoted from it earlier. But in their first bulleted comment, they suggested that the Department of Labor might be better off focused on placing non-disabled people, which really reeks of the civil rights issues that people with disabilities have dealt with over the years. The Department of Labor serves all people seeking work, and to suggest that DHS, Human Services, Social Services Department, could do that better than the Department of Labor is confusing to me. I've also been sitting on a transition team because we've been asked to try to move this forward as quickly as possible, and so we've been cooperating with that. As part of that, I've met with the HR director and made her aware that we have some ADA, reasonable accommodation claims within the department, and was asking for how they would be prepared to deal with those. The first question that I was asked was, what was the ADA? And then when I said, well, we currently have about 40 people that we're dealing with in that arena, and she said to me, so do you actually hire your clients? So I say that just to say that's kind of the environment, and I don't fault them for that. I just don't think they're well educated on disability issues and people with disabilities. I will also say that the synergy that they talk about, as some of you have already questioned, Commissioner Butler,
Don't need you to wrap up.
Exists now. We reach out for comparable benefits in many arenas, So the cost of the transfer, again, is going to be huge, just the actual transfer cost. Plus, we will lose. We'll go into FY13 with an $8.2 million deficit in our budget because we're going to lose the service integration strategy that was alluded to previously. So services will be impacted, staff will be impacted, and again, the rationale doesn't make sense. We're also about to publish a response to the points that came out from
I'm
DHS.
going to have to call time on you.
Okay, so just look for that. Thank you.
All right, Tim Evans. Next will be Linda Shepard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Tim Evans. I'm Human Resources Director for the Georgia Department of Labor. I'm here speaking on behalf of the agency. In part, in a bit of history, I was with the Department of Labor 11 years ago when we transitioned the Division of Rehabilitation Services from DHR into the Department of Labor. So when we talk about a simple, how do they put, a lift and shift of people and resources, and on June 30th they're with DOL, on July 1st they're with DHS, I'm here to just say that it's not that simple. It is significantly more encumbered process. I know that 10 years ago we actually spent a significant amount of time, I believe we had a year and a half, 2 years for the planning and preparation, not only for the employee side but also to ensure that there were no fiscal mishaps. We were prepared to receive the financial responsibilities for all of the responsibilities that the VR program takes care of on behalf of clients, contractors, and really every piece of that program. So here we are, probably 4 months left. We're still talking about whether this will even happen or not. I know there are teams talking about this, but I'm here just to share major concerns that while we can click and drag in a PeopleSoft system, the employee part of this process, there's a significant financial service piece that I know people are talking about right now, but I share a great concern that within the next couple of months it will be a very significant uphill battle to be able to pull this off. I'm not even sure that it can. Also, there's been some questions about job losses. We are still looking at that from the agency's perspective. Even though we are clicking and dragging all of the Division of Rehabilitation Services, we're not sure of how it will impact the rest of the agency in terms of the part of our agency that provides support to the division itself, the same as we do all the other sections within our agency, be it out of the IT division, financial services, human resources, any of the other administrative support. So potentially there may be some job losses as a result of this. And that's all my comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Shepard, and then Joe Tedesco.
Thank you for inviting us. My name is Linda Shepard, and first and foremost, I am an adult with a disability, a pretty significant learning disability. And I've worked with the civil rights of people with disabilities for many, many years, probably about 20. And one of the pieces of the Rehab Act when we were talking is that why was that formed? It was formed because people with disabilities don't always want to be associated with a medical model. And for years we have fought that disability does not always come as a medical model. We are not all medically fragile and need assistance. But that is some. That's a few of the many of us that look just like myself that walk in a door every day. I want to be able to walk in a door where everybody else walks. That's what civil rights is all about. As the chair of the State Rehab Council, we sent a letter out talking about some talking points and some questions, and there's 14. I won't go over all those, but I have letters with me that I'd be glad to share. The State Rehab Council has also developed a form like this that talks about what are the dollars that would be lost, how is the state dollars affected. As we've been talking and gathering things, the State Rehab Council is mandated by the Rehab Act. It is put together by an assorted of people, all that have been appointed by the governor to come and be the one thing that we are appointed to be, and that is the voice of the consumer. And the voice of the consumer spoke before, after the move was made the last time. In that instance, it took 2 years to do a move, and the people were allowed to have public hearings and the input of the consumers who this will affect most. I know the staff and everybody else will. but the consumers, the individuals with disabilities that this will affect, and what door they walk in or what door they walk out. Those public hearings happened in the last move. And it was voiced by the consumers that the place they wanted to walk in and be a part of was Department of Labor. Now, is the council supporting the move or not? We are not supporting either or. But we do have some questions we want to ask, and we do have some points that are of concern. We need to understand that dignity first, comes with people with disabilities. I was at the grand opening of Warm Springs when your daughter cut the ribbon and spoke. And at that moment, I was never more proud to see all the youth with disabilities who do have some challenges be able to walk and know that they were going to graduate like everybody else, they were going to get a job like everybody else, and the medical issues for even someone that wears glasses or contacts or hearing aids, or any of us that might have diabetes or any of the other high blood pressure. Yes, okay, that we know that where we have to go, and that is you have to have the medical model. You have to have those things fixed. But for us, and for us to talk about this, we also were approached by the governor's office, and we're all appointed by him. And we're working with them to come across and answer some of the questions. But as we were appointed because we all came with a wide array of talents and people that we represent. And knowing that this is a democracy, we know that nothing is ever done until it's done. One of the proudest pieces of being in America is knowing that we have the right to talk. I know my time will be almost up, but I would like to let you all know I have copies of the state rehab letter if you would like a copy. I also have copies of the brochures we put about matching dollars and how many dollars would be lost. Did I get my time? Thanks.
All right, thank you, Joe Tedesco, and then Alice Pritchard.
Thank you very much for inviting us to speak today. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm the Vice Chair of the State Rehab Council, and as Linda has said, we're appointed by the governor, and we represent a diverse group of individuals, and we represent the program itself to oversee and monitor and assist with that monitoring by running surveys that look at the need in the state, and that we also look at the excuse me, I'm nervous. Okay, sorry, yeah, I am kind of rambling. So it is our chief duty to make sure that this program is vital and that it represents the people in our state. And I want to make a statement because one of the key things that we do is public hearings, and it is mandatory under the law that we conduct public hearings whenever there's major policy within the state, within the VOC rehab program. We've not had the opportunity to be able to do that as we did 10 years ago when there was a move, to be able to collect the information and the input from the public to find out whether or not they agreed that this move would make an improvement in the program. And we've collected since then, through our letter and our communication with the public, a lot of letters that we would, and comments that we would love to share with you as well. I know people are going to be here today. But I think this is a really good indicator of what's out there. Aside from the outrage of the reasons that were shared as to why the program was being moved, I'd like you to, if you haven't read it, I'd like to at least tell you in the first point as to why the program should be moved. It was stated, with an unemployment rate that remains around 10%, Georgians would be better served by a Department of Labor more narrowly focused on assisting non-disabled Georgians find and maintain employment. That's blatantly a problem. That's discriminatory. If you took out non-disabled and entered in any other minority group, we wouldn't have a legislation that would be put forth. People would be embarrassed to put it forth. It's a bad idea. And when you write legislation based on that bad idea, no one should be made should have to vote on it. Being blind doesn't make you incapable of feeding yourself, and being deaf doesn't make you incapable of caring for your children, and being in a wheelchair doesn't keep you from being independent. Ask yourself what does. Not having a job does. Regardless of what you look like or who you are, in this state today, before anything changes, and hopefully under your watchful eye, it will remain the singular focus of the department that's dedicated to putting all Georgians and helping them find and helping them to maintain their employment. People shouldn't have to go to a separate agency. If tomorrow you had difficulty walking, you should go to the same agency to get a job that you do today. It's important. It's a matter of dignity, and it's a matter of not discriminating against people with disabilities. We've gone too far. All of you have done so much to bring people with disabilities to a point where they are, through the last move, able to go where everybody else goes to get their services. And I ask you to continue to fight for that right, for people to be served, all Georgians to be served in the same place and to receive the same services.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Alice Pritchard, and then Dorothea Cadet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alice Richard, and I'm here today representing the Georgia Coalition on Blindness. And I first want to say that I'm offended and appalled by DHS's intermemo in regards to transition. Number one, to think that we're not as entitled to go into wherever we want to get a job, which would be DOL, and compete for the same jobs as our able-bodied peers, offends me. The second thing that was said here today was how they're better equipped to help us with jobs. I'm here to tell you that when we were under DHS and nothing has changed for the blind people, why is it then that when we go in, and because we're receiving TANF programs, they tell the blind, oh, you don't have to go through our work training program. You go home, you're getting benefits, we'll take care of you. Blind people don't want to be taken care of. And in fact, they don't take care of us. It's a medical model, but yet Medicaid and most social service programs don't provide the rehabilitation that blind people need. Even DOL wasn't providing that until Mark Butler came in as commissioner, and they finally are just starting to get it, and things are starting to open up for the blind under DOL. It seems to me that this is a political move. I don't know why, other than the fact that we were asking that the dollars be put back so we could draw down the federal matches so we could serve more people and put more people with disabilities to work. I am a BSW. I worked in the state of Indiana for DFACS, and when I moved to Georgia, I was told I couldn't work for DFACS because I couldn't do the job. I had a friend who was blind who worked for DFACS, and the minute she lost all her vision, they showed her the door. So don't tell me that under DHS the blind are going to do better. Things aren't perfect under DOL for the blind, but they were getting there. For the first time the past 2 years, Commissioner Butler has sat down with the blind community and talked with us and tried to work out those things. The Industries for the Blind is the prime example. He has been trying to help get a contract back that would help keep blind people employed. He's listened to us, and we are talking about the fact that even at the Industries, we want to see blind people not just at the table doing the sheltered work stuff, but also in management positions, because we are capable. We believe, and we tried 4 years ago to get a separate agency, because it's been proven that for blind people being in having a separate agency, things go better. We were told there was no money, but now all of a sudden there's money to put us up under an agency where they don't even get it and don't understand blindness. I don't understand, and I plead with you that you leave us under DOL, where at least there's at least now open communication and things are trying to be worked out, instead of putting us somewhere because there's no trust. I want to know how many people with disabilities are at the table on this transitioning. We didn't even know about it till it was put into the press, and even now when we're there, they don't want to answer our questions. So I beg of you to leave us where we're at and not put us where we'll be held down and treated so badly.
Thank you very much for your comments. Have Dorothea Cadet, and then Rachel Krause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dorothea Cadet, and I am a parent. I am the president of the South Fulton Coalition of Understanding in South Fulton, and I am a newly appointed member of the SRC. And I am coming to you more as a parent than anything else because, and I don't know if I have permission to pass this out, but this young man is my son, and his name is Christopher Cadet. He graduated from Banneker High School in 2009, and I have taught him coming up. He has a developmental disability, and he's hearing impaired, and he does not have use of his right hand. He suffered spinal meningitis when he was 6 months of age, and he almost died. So I'm here to advocate on his behalf, and those people who I stand on behalf of in the advocacy and disability community. I am very concerned about HB 831 for a lot of different reasons. One is that there does not seem to be adequate transparency. There, to my knowledge, have not been enough formal public hearings to the disability community for them to have their input, because what you do will affect them. What you vote or don't vote on will affect them, and I'm afraid it will affect them adversely. Also, the disability community, for most part, have not even heard of this. I am in contact with a lot of disability advocacy groups, and I have asked, and they don't know nothing about this. So it's kind of like asking me to go to prom, but I don't have a date to go to the prom with. It's like you asking me to do something that it doesn't make sense to do. And also, I'm concerned with the rush to transfer these services. From December of 2011 to July 1st, 2012, that's 6 months. I don't understand how you're going to transfer a multi-million-dollar agency and all the things it encompasses, the clients, the staff, the personnel, the logistics, all that stuff. How are you going to do that in 6 months and not adversely affect the clients? It seems to me that a lot of people will have a interruption in services, and they will also fall to the crack, never to be seen again. Also, I was on a conference call Monday, and two things that disturbed me. One was that there's an IT situation and there's a budget situation that DHS has not figured out how to integrate DOL. That alarms me because that sets up a lot of bells and whistles, and we know that government services IT services don't move very fast. And then another thing that disturbs me is that as a member of the SRC, I have been educated on the many services and resources that VR provides to our young teens and adults with disability. My son was actually under the transition program for VR when he graduated from high school, and he was able to be, and he's currently now a client of Bobby Dye Institute under supported employment services. And so I don't understand. My problem is that if these innovative and cutting edge technologies that VR is coming up with in the future to help our children to be productive, to go to school if they choose, to have gainful employment if they want, these will be severely impacted. So I ask you to consider HB 831 as a no. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Rachel Krause and then Kevin Simmons. Can you get to the mic? Okay, all right.
I'm pretty loud anyway, so.
All right.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Krause. I was born and raised here in Georgia. I'm also an attorney here in Atlanta. When I was 16 years old, about 21 years ago, I was a 16-year-old girl planning what my life was going to be like and had a vision of what that was going to be. And then in an instant, in a car accident, that was changed. And immediately I began to question whether all those plans and dreams that I had as a 16-year-old would ever actually come true. And so I went to rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation. And after going through physical rehabilitation, I was able to go and finish high school. I was able to go to college. I was able to go to law school. And I don't think I could have done any of that without a goal, without a purpose, without a job. My life turned out pretty much the way I envisioned it when I was a 16-year-old, because I was able to have the opportunity to get an education so I could get a job. And Commissioner Reese said up here a moment ago that in his experience, people don't care where their benefits come from, which department it comes from. And that may be right in some instances, but I think it's fundamentally wrong in this instance. Because in this instance, it's really an issue of perception. People with disabilities need a goal, they need a purpose, they need a focus, just like everybody else does. We all have the things that get us up out of bed every day and make us go do what we need to do, whether it's our children, our families, our jobs. We define ourselves by those things. And the Department of Labor has done a fantastic job of giving people the opportunity and the know-how to go out there and get a job and getting them ready to get that job. I think that changing it to a department like Human Services is going to fundamentally shift the focus away from rehabilitating people and putting them back into the workplace to one of providing benefits. Now, I said a moment ago I'm a lawyer. In my professional life, I also deal with disability law. I deal with benefits litigation and disability litigation. And I have seen firsthand in my professional life the effect, the self-fulfilling vicious circle that happens when a person becomes disabled and is provided and gets this mindset of these benefits that are provided to them, rather than the mindset of, I have to move on, get back to my life, and get a job and go back to what I was doing before. And so I think that the committee should remember this issue of perception, which is so important. As someone a moment ago said, people with disabilities do care which door they walk in. They care that they walk in the door where you go to get a job. And that has always been the Department of Labor, and it should remain that way.
Thank you very much. Kevin Simmons and then Amanda Buckner.
When I was 16, I got shot. I acquired a brain injury. When I was hospitalized for six months, and when I got through with that, I came to high school. I was a good student, but I alienated myself to the other students. And one day, my vocational person, she said, do you know about Warm Springs? And I was into it, and I wanted to go and see what it was like. And I got there, and
Mr. Simmons, just a second. Could you move a little closer to the mic where they can pick it up on the TV? We're being broadcast.
yeah, I was I was in school one day. My vocational coordinator, she told me, have you ever heard of Warm Springs? I said no. She said you should go there. It'll help you with your independence. Cause then I was totally dependent. So I went there and I got my independence back, my dressing, bathing, put on my clothes, and the other side of it is Warm Springs. They got a job training, and I did two things. But the last thing was a Roosevelt White House, little White House, and I loved it. So one December of December of '09, I I graduated. And so I stood up and said, my body is partially confined, but my mind is fully forever liberated. And that's what that's my that's what all I got to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming today. All right, Amanda Buckner, and then Gerald Powell. And if you'll raise the mic back up where we can hear you there. Thank you.
Good evening, or good afternoon, committee. My name is Amanda Buckner. I come to you today speaking first as a private citizen of the state of Georgia, as an individual with a disability who has benefited from the services of the vocational rehabilitation program, and who, as a result of the relationship that I developed with my vocational rehabilitation counselor, chose to pursue serving as a certified rehabilitation counselor myself. In 2007, I went to work for the Georgia Department of Labor Vocational Rehabilitation Program as a counselor, and I have been since employed with the agency. I strongly oppose this move to the Department of Human Services because I believe that doing so will undermine a decade's worth of work to help us advocate for individuals with disabilities to be treated equally in their pursuit of employment. If you allow this bill to leave this committee and go to the floor for a vote, you will undo all of that work in a matter of less than 6 months. It is a move that will cause you to spend taxpayer money unnecessarily. It is a move that will create barriers rather than prevent them. It is a move that, like you have heard here from so many who have already spoken, does not make sense. I implore you to continue allowing us to work under the partnership that we have developed with the Department of Labor to be able to focus people's opinions and beliefs about people with disabilities being able to work on their strengths and their skills first. And if you allow or cause us to have to go under the Department of Human Services, we will more readily have to disclose that we are an agency that works with people with disabilities. And anytime you make that the focus of the conversation at first, you take the focus off of the person's strengths and abilities to do the job. We can accommodate any barrier that exists except for an attitudinal barrier. And a move to put the Vocational Rehabilitation Program, Division of Rehabilitation Services, under the Department of Human Services will create one of the hugest attitudinal barriers that you could ever create. Again, I implore you not to let this bill go to the floor for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward today. Gerald Powell, and then Eugene Sparrow will be next.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to take this opportunity to speak before your committee. I also implore you not to go forward with this bill. I am a Vietnam veteran, retired for more than 24 years of service. I had a job, but when I became blind, they showed me the door. Human Services was nowhere to help me. Everywhere I turned to try to keep services, there was no way to get any help. I was told about the vocational rehabilitation service. That was the only place that I personally received help. I went from a person who was down with depression to a person who was inspired not only to lift myself up, but also to help other people with disabilities. Since working with the vocational rehabilitation services, I seek to help other people with various different types of disabilities to get the benefits that belongs to them. Most of us don't ask for a helping hand, a hand to feed us, clothe us, and then shut us in the door, shut us away from the community. We would rather work and earn our way than receive a helping hand. We are not handicaps. Not one day have I stayed in the cold with a cap in my hand asking for a handout. Give me a job and let me earn my way. When you take the rehabilitation services away from the Department of Labor, that's what you're trying to make us do. And I'm a dog if I'm going to do it. I seek you not to go forward with this bill. Leave vocational rehabilitation, leave rehabilitation services up under the Department of Labor. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward today. Mr. Sparrow, and then Bete, is it Junovich? Okay.
My name is Eugene Sparrow, and I am a client of the Department of Labor. I'm currently in a job search program, and the counselor that I work with is magnificent in what they do. They work with you. They provide services for you. I'm a veteran too, and they team me up with the Veteran Round Table. That's through Goodwill. It's a job search program. It's teamed up with the Department of Labor. That's more money to help. And what they do, they provide me with work coordinator. They got counselor. They got job search people that go out and actually find the job for you, and then get you ready for that job. What this program entails is like a job adjustment. The first thing is job adjustment. They train you 15 days to see you're ready to go back to work. Now, and then if you're not ready, they got job adjustment. The first one is job, where they give you 15 days to see if you're ready to work. Then they got job adjustment. That's 60 days to real acquaint you with working. The program work. They got to sit up where it work fine. If it's not broken, don't fix it. It worked fine. Now, me, I like dignity. You put it on social service, you're gonna lose a lot of people in the street that want to work because they want that dignity, looking for work. Social services, there are people need social services. We don't need social services. We need someone like Department of Labor, the program they got, and they got them set up straight and right, and they're working. Now I asked them to suspend me from my job search because I got therapy for 8 weeks. They did it. Cut the money off. Don't waste the money. And when I'm ready to go back for job search, they'll pick me up again. Will human services do that? They got to sit up perfect. It don't need to be changed. It's a working program, and it's doing its job. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for coming today. Ms. Grinovich.
Good afternoon. My name is Betsy Grinovich, and I want to thank you for the privilege of allowing me to speak in opposition of HB 831. As I was sitting there, I decided to speak on two perspectives, one as a personal testimony and one as a single parent. Let me do the personal testimony being visually impaired. I want to thank Commissioner Butler for all he has been doing for our blind and visually impaired constituents here in the state. He has made us have a way to look up and feel like things are coming further along than they've ever been. Why move us? If we have someone who already understands our quote-unquote disability, if you want to call it that, why not leave us where we have someone who understands us, understands our needs, and understands our potential? His goal for us is not for us to live on SSDI and SSI and to feel like we have to depend on someone. His goal for us and our own personal goal is to live independently. I don't need the assistance from DHS. I'm a single parent of 4 children. I'm doing fine without them, except my second reason for opposing the move. The way their Office of Child Support Services operates, and if you want more testimony of that later, I'd be glad to fill you in. I would never want to go under DHS, and I would do whatever I had to do. My son and I both gave up our second jobs today to be here. We gave up money to come here today because this is such an important issue to us, not only in the blind community, but as a parent whose Office of Child Support Services has not met our needs over the years that we've been under them. I adamantly oppose this bill and ask you all please to oppose it and not let it out of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioner Butler, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to wrap up all your folks here, or if you want to say anything else, that's fine. If you don't, that'll be fine as well. With whatever you'd like to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate your opportunity today. I don't know what I can really add to that. I think it just comes down to common sense. I know that if I was sitting on this panel today, I know exactly how I would vote. I think everybody knows how I'd vote. I've said it. I just asked you to vote your conscience, vote your heart. I see the signs and I see the things that kind of go on, but this is what's right. We're making progress. Things are getting better. And right now, especially in these times when everybody who is out there looking for work right now is struggling, making such a drastic move as this during these times is ill-advised. Everybody deserves the exact same opportunity and the same chance to get a job, no matter if you have a disability or not. You deserve the same respect and the same dignity. We are giving that to people at the Department of Labor. I will demand no less than that. One of the reasons why I chose to run for this office was because vocational rehabilitation was part of it, because it's something I am passionate about. I campaigned on it. I made promises. Let me fulfill those promises to the people that I believe in and the cause that I believe in. That's all that I ask.
Thank you very much. Representative McCall, you want to wrap up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for listening to all the testimony, and especially thank you for all of y'all coming and taking time away from whatever y'all do during the day, working, whatever, to come and talk to us. I don't think there's anybody in the legislature that understands the situation on some of this any better than Doug Collins and myself. I only wish my son was still around to where he could take advantage of some of this. If you look in your packet, members of the committee, there's letters from advocacy groups that are approving of this move. And at the end of the day, the focus is job opportunities. And training people with difficulties to get those job opportunities, I think, is the focus of what either one of the agencies should be doing. And I personally think DHS is better qualified. Now, thinking analytically about some of the stuff that y'all have heard, people with, and I like the people with different abilities. I never have figured out what normal was, and ain't no such thing as normal. But people with different abilities have barriers to unemployment, just like some of the senior community service employment people did. And the senior service employment got moved to DHR, and it's the same principle. DOL has a heck of a job they're trying to do now, just to employ people without difficulties. The other part of this equation is funding, and y'all heard a lot of folks talk about the funding. Dollars need to be put back to where we can draw matching funds, and these dollars are separated. And it's my understanding that the budget that was submitted to OPB and the governor, the entire 2% came out of VR at the first shot at it, and the governor and OPB spread it back out, which is what the budget we had. So I don't know how you can argue that we're putting dollars and dollars and dollars and they're not getting cut when the entire 2% came from the VR side of it. If you will look at some audits, one reason we couldn't get matching funds is because dollars didn't get pushed out the door and used where they were needed. Over the past 2 years, there's been $500,000 left on the table that could have been used for drawing down matching funds to help fund VR, and I don't know that DHS can do a whole lot better, but anyway, I'd appreciate a positive vote on this, and y'all vote your conscience. And again, thank you for everybody that came to testify.
Thank you. Chairman Dixon.
Mr. Chairman, we've heard some compelling testimony today. There's no question about that, but I'm of the opinion that we need some more time to debate this and hear more on it. So because of my feeling of that, I would move to table this to a time specific, which would be the next called meeting of the committee.
I have a motion to table. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to table House Bill 831 till the next call meeting of the committee. All those in favor, if you would, say aye. Okay, sure. Okay.
Be the next call meeting, Mr. Chairman.
It would be next week. It's hard to get it's hard to get meeting time. We got so many. It'd probably be next Wednesday or Thursday at this time, about 3:30. All right. We have a motion and a second to table to the next scheduled meeting. If I could, all those in favor, if you would, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. All right, let the record show that we had one no vote on that. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We have heard some great testimony from all sides. We will have a meeting next week. We'll let everybody know as quickly as we can. Thank y'all for coming today. This meeting is adjourned.